Hey.
Are you the person from chat?
Yeah. What
Okay.
villain?
So can I read your message just quick that you put in chat?
Sure.
Okay. Second.
It's just mostly my curiosity,
Hmm.
like, are there any concerns about like the ties in the government of Ukraine? It's mostly just, I think there's not much talk about this.
Well, the thing is for me is that I don't think this at all is like this is not, I think, the reason for the invasion though, right? I don't really think far right ties is really a concern of Vladimir Putin or the invasion. Considering that Vladimir Putin also has allied himself with the Wagner Group, an organization that is much larger than, say, the Azov Battalion, and is led by a man with SS tattoos and neo-Nazi tattoos, and was pictured with Putin in 2016, and has committed war crimes in Central Africa, tortured people with sledgehammers, and is full of neo-Nazis. There's been a neo-Nazi problem in the Russian military for a while. Not to mention, I would say the rates of anti-Semitism when it comes to like certain polling you can do, like when it comes to, I think it was one done by the Pew Research Center, that 5% of Ukrainians believe that Jews should not be citizens of Ukraine, which I think is terrible. But 14% of Russians believe that. And so for me, this idea of like concerned over Nazis or denazification, to me is a red herring. It's not really the issue in question, but it just plays well when talking to the media because everyone wants to say they're fighting Nazis because, you know, everyone for good reason hates Nazis. Unless, of course, they're the Wagner Group, apparently.
The Wagner Group, I've seen this as well. It looks pretty scary, but it seems like it's like a mercenary Nazi group or something like this.
Yeah, that Putin has allied himself with. I'm sure
Yeah.
if I think chat, if somebody could post the image of Putin pictured with the Wagner Group, in 2016, the leader specifically with the neo-Nazi SS tattoos, I would appreciate it. Not to mention Lukashenko's
Uh,
comments about Adolf Hitler are also pretty concerning.
mhm. I'm not familiar with that specifically, but one thought. Uh, um, what do you think about the Azov? Like, are you
Oh,
familiar?
I'm familiar and I don't like them. I don't like the
Okay,
Azov
okay,
Battalion.
okay. But are you familiar with like the NATO are equipping their nations with nukes? Does that ring any bells?
NATO is equipping their nations with nukes. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, like they talk about it being like defensive nukes, right? Or am I wrong about this?
Um, you mean which nation?
Any nation that joins NATO, right?
No, not any nation that joins NATO gets to have their own nukes.
Hmm.
Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia do not have nuclear weapons. Romania does not have nuclear weapons. Hungary does not have nuclear weapons. I mean, there's a lot of NATO nations without nuclear weapons. In fact, I think there's more NATO nations without nuclear weapons than there are NATO nations with nuclear.
Hmm. But there are NATO nations that do receive nuclear weapons, I guess.
What do you mean, like by receive? There's NATO nations with nuclear weapons, like
Yeah.
France and the UK and America, but they're not like giving other nations nukes to just like have nukes. Like, what nation would that be?
I mean, America is a nuclear nation, right?
Yeah,
It's a
but
NATO.
they're the first ever nuclear nation. They didn't receive nukes; they made their own nukes.
Mm-hmm. And they kind of allow some other people to do so as well, like nuke autonomy, kind of, for political power.
Like France and UK and America are the only three nations within NATO that has nuclear weapons.
Mm-hmm. I guess basically the whole concern is like, yes, there are global Nazis all over the place, this and that, but there comes a point when they might be able to get weaponized and take over governments that becomes a whole nother level, maybe.
So you're scared that Nazis are going to take over Ukraine.
It seems like it might have happened since 2014. I don't know, like,
So what Nazis are in or with it with Zelensky and his government that they're like very like, because the Azov Battalion's political party does not have a single seat in the government. Not out of 450 MPs, they don't make up a single seat.
yeah. Are you familiar with the political parties that splintered during that time?
Yeah, I think there's like Savopka or whatever. It's like the three, the three finger party. It's like their flag is like the three.
Mm-hmm.
They have one seat out of
Mm-hmm.
450 representatives.
Mm-hmm.
That's not that big of a concern to me, if I'm being completely honest.
No.
Like because in America, like we had like some pretty terrible people like hold one seat in Congress. Like
Exactly.
Marjorie Taylor Greene holds a seat in Congress, and she like talked about like Jewish space leaders. There's also Madison Cawthorn.
Yes.
Marjorie Taylor Greene just went to Nick Fuentes' rally, but that does not mean that like Nick Fuentes is about to take over America. You know?
Mm, that's maybe a little bit too much to say, but at least there seems to be a certain kind of a thin thread of like a little bit crazy people getting into power, right?
Not really. Like who?
No. Joe Biden, Trump for America, for example.
Well, yeah, Trump is like absolutely like god awful. But
The
I would not classify Trump as like a Nazi. I think that's like a little far from me.
Yeah, but you don't have to classify them as Nazi, but they are very scary if they are completely big sponsors of military industries. That's very, very not
Yeah,
cool.
I mean I understand that, but I thought we were like talking about like Ukraine like being taken over by Nazis, and like
Yeah,
Ukraine is led by a Jewish man whose family survived the Holocaust.
yeah.
So
I, I
that
think
doesn't
I
seem.
think he's
Usually, I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that I think most Nazis don't like Jews.
unless they're very useful, I guess, right?
So how is Zelensky the useful Jew Nazi?
I don't know. It seems like he's not he seems to be more welcoming to. He's not like actively asking for help to deal with these guys. He's not asking for U.S. help to deal with the Nazov guys.
Um, I think the main priority Zelensky has at the moment is probably dealing with the Russian invasion of his country.
Yeah, yeah, currently. But we're talking. This is not new. This is not living in a vacuum.
Well, in 2014, after the like Russian invasion of Crimea and what happened in the Donbass and Donetsk region, Ukraine's military was very famously unprepared, right? It didn't know what to do. It kind of much of it melted, and I think this is much of the same reason why Russia is so surprised at how well Ukrainian resistance has fared in comparison to 2014. But Ukraine was basically like just asking for literally anyone to pick up a gun and fight, and that's when the Azov Battalion was born. In a moment of desperation, where basically they looked to anybody to throw a gun at and say like, "Please shoot at the invaders. Please stop this falling apart of Ukraine." And in the last 8 years, he's built up his military to try to somewhat align with NATO standards. But the Azov
That's a
Battalion,
very interesting incentive. I just want to add it there, but go on.
um, but the Azov Battalion, again, makes up a very, 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 very small part of Ukraine's defensive forces. The idea that they could take over the country, I think is silly. It would I just don't think they have the power, influence, or arms to do so.
Yeah, maybe. It's interesting, at least to hear.
Like
Like
I
these.
wouldn't say the Wagner group is gonna take over Russia. I would find that proposal equally as silly.
Yeah, they don't have the movement behind them like the Azov did.
Well, but their movement hasn't gotten a single seat. They don't have a single seat in NDMP. They like if we look up the Azov Battalion's political party, right? Because they do have a political party. Azov political party. You can see how much, they did in the last election. Like how well they did. And the last time I checked, I think they got about 2% of the vote, which is about as much of the vote that, like, I would say, like, maybe the Greens have ever got at the most, like the Green Party, or I would say maybe the Libertarian Party have gotten the most they ever got.
Yeah, and that's why they require like these splinter political groups to normalize these things. Just
Okay,
like
but
Republicans
which one of these splinter political groups though, like actually like is influential?
I mean, we can just look up the history of Ukrainian governments, I guess, but that would be very useful at these times, right?
Well, like okay, but like what part of them? Like what like I'm looking right now, they hold 0 seats, and I think 23 out of 158,390, like they have like basically like no power politically. Like I'm trying to like what is the splinter group that holds all this like power? Because we were talking about like the Three Finger Party earlier, and they hold 1 seat, which out of 450 again is not extremely influential.
Wait, so the right sector and Svoboda, those are maybe one of these, right?
Yeah, we can talk about the right sector or Svoboda. I never know how to pronounce it correctly. It's Svoboda, is it? So the right sector.
But I also want to.
I want to say the right sector has less power than the Azov did. They have again 0 out of 450, and now just 2 out of 158,399. And if we go to Svoboda, right? This is actually probably the biggest. This is the biggest out of all of them, right? So this is the one that out of all of these people, they have the most power out of all of these 3. They hold 890 out of 43,122 and 1 out of 450 seats. So this would be the most powerful out of all 3 of them. But again, very, very, very weak.
Yeah.
This is less than 1%.
So where are these forces we're talking about that is the majority that does not accept Azov military operations, right?
Where's the majority? Like of...
Yeah.
I mean, with every other political party and every other militia and every other part of the Ukrainian military.
Yeah. I wonder, like, how much work they have done.
Can I also say, like, again, like, the Nazi... Would you agree that the Nazis were known for, like, putting gay people in concentration camps?
Of course.
Yeah.
It's like Nazis thrive on everything that is just hate and the division, right?
Yeah. But isn't Chechnya also had a very famous moment in the near past where the Chechen government put gay people in concentration camps? Which is in that same Chechen military, part of that same Chechen government, is fighting on behalf of the Russians in Ukraine right now. So I'm just saying,
pretty
like,
crazy world, right?
Yeah, I'm just saying that, like, denazification does not seem to be a real priority of the Russian government, which has aligned itself with many far-right people, like the Wagner Group, like the Chechen government, and Lukashenko. Even though Lukashenko, I think it's less evident. I think he just made a really, really bad quote about Adolf Hitler.
Yeah. Like at most, I just wanted to at least like I was interested in this space of concern, maybe if there was available, and like you are definitely giving this some space, and it's pretty cool.
Okay. Yeah, I guess for me, like I'm always against the far right. I don't want the far right to take over at any point. That's why when I was talking about Poland and their support to Ukraine, I made sure to mention that Poland is a very anti-LGBT and very anti-abortion like country that, I mean, government, not necessarily country, government that
Patriarchal, maybe?
say it again.
Patriarchal, maybe, as we have, maybe.
Hmm? I like being far right is like of course a concern for me, but I don't think that Vladimir Putin is very concerned about whether this side or that side is far right. Because I would also say that Putin's his own government is pretty far right. I wouldn't call him a Nazi, but I would say he's most certainly very far right.
Putin?
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure, right? I mean, yeah, that's an interesting comparison. People say like he, but what I think is like important about this, like
Also, can I
when
ask
the
you? I don't know if I don't want you to dox yourself, but are you a Russian by chance, or are you Ukrainian, or
no,
no? Where are you?
no,
Where are you
I'm
from?
just very sympathetic of my brothers and sisters in Donbass that have to live under disgusting Nazi rule. It's just a nightmare. I can't think of it.
Brothers and sisters in Donbass who have to live under disgusting Nazi rule. Who are you referring to when it comes to disgusting Nazi rule?
I mean, I this is how I do perceive it. Like this is really how I do perceive it. When you have a government that when you have a collection of power that calls themselves government, but they cannot deal with some type of terrorism or harassment of a certain type of people under their nation, it's very scary. So I think that's and if they are bending for a certain Nazi elements, that kind of feels like that kind of gives the game, right?
Well, like again, I would just say that. So, do you believe? Like, let me ask you: are you in support of the Russian invasion of Ukraine?
Uh, I I would I would at least call it I would at least like to point out like there's only one version that say this is an invasion. There's not like the Russians have said this is special operations against the Nazis, and like
But there, so was the okay. Now you gotta know that I'll talk to people who disagree with me, but I don't like it when
uh,
somebody like bullshits me, right? Like we know it's an invasion, right? They're moving troops into a
um,
separate sovereign country with its own government with the intentions of changing that government. It's a regime change war. Like they're invading
I mean,
Ukraine.
yeah, okay, okay. I can see your point. Okay, I would definitely be with you and say this is an invasion if they had control of their nation. But while
Wait,
Ukraine,
wait, then can I ask this? Did the Nazis invade Russia?
I think so, right? That's what history
Yeah,
says.
Hitler. Yeah, Hitler's Nazis do. The bad guys.
Mm-hmm.
They invaded Russia, right?
Yeah,
But they didn't win. And they didn't control all of Russia. But it was still an invasion, right?
sure. Yeah, if they
So,
when they took some parts from Russia, right?
yeah, and if you look in at the invasion, the Russians control Crimea and parts of the south that they've invaded out of Crimea into. We can look at a map like right now. Like this is one of the most updated maps. Like they control territory here. They control territory up here. They just took, I think, this location right here about an hour ago. Like they're controlling territory.
Yeah, 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 for sure.
So this is an invasion.
Uh, yeah, you can say that if that makes sense for you,
Well,
but
no,
like,
I'm
how much?
I'm not asking what it makes sense for me. I'm asking you just said an invasion is when you invade a country and take territory, right? I'm
That
looking
is, yeah,
and they are invading the country and this looks like they've taken territory.
yeah.
So it's an invasion.
Uh,
Are you like scared of like getting arrested if you say it's an invasion or something? Like, are you okay? Like is
I really doubt I would get arrested for that. I
okay.
would be really surprised.
Okay, I like it's very obviously an invasion, right? Like if I asked you the sky was blue, you would say yes. This was an invasion.
Um,
You should like this is like you just said you gave me your own definition for what an invasion is, and I'm showing you right now this meets that definition.
it's I know it's funny because it's weird how it's hard to just say yes or no, but the only like only only
It's
thing
not
that
that hard, I don't really think it is. Like if like I would say the America invaded Iraq, right? Right? They went into
uh,
Iraq to change the government because they didn't like the government and what they were doing, right? Like that's the American invasion 2003.
oh yeah,
Rush
okay, okay, I get your point. But let's see if we compare the status of Iraq and Ukraine. You can maybe you maybe know more about this than me. Was it similarly stable
was Iraq stable in 2003?
before the invasion?
Um
Occurred
that's a
is
hard
occurred.
question to answer actually.
Wait, this isn't
Okay,
where I
that's why
parked my
I
car.
feel it's
Because
hard to answer if it's
well no
invasion.
no 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 no. Whether or not a country is stable does not change whether it's an invasion. If American
Yeah.
troops landed in Somalia to take over the country tomorrow, it's not now declared not an invasion because the country is unstable. If America landed in Libya tomorrow to take over the country, that we would still call it an invasion, even if the country is currently engaged in a civil war between the GNA
Okay,
and
then we
and
call it an
Haftar.
invasion for sure.
Okay, okay, so so you agree it's an invasion then?
Sure, invasion, yeah, against the ass of Ukraine, sure.
Against the Azov Ukraine, against Azov then, just Azov.
I feel it should be obvious that like Azov is the like main content here.
So let me ask you a question: do Azov currently control uh, Kiev?
I would assume so for sure.
How do they control it? Because I have heard no reports of Azov controlling Kiev or the government in Kiev. So how do they control it?
Uh, and when you say control, what are
Well,
you
like, do
thinking?
they control the streets? Like, because if this is a military operation to destroy Azov, which I'm just gonna tell you, I don't agree with that at all. But let's I'll try to be good faith and engage with it. Um, then why are they attacking non-Azov battalions? They're not only just attacking the Azov battalion, they're attacking kindergartens. They've attacked hospitals. They've attacked residential housing and communities and apartment
Okay.
blocks. They've attacked military units that are not associated with Azov in any way. And they're attacking the capital, which the government in the capital is headed by Zelensky, a Jewish descendant of Holocaust survivors who's not part of the
So
right sector or Savotka or Azov in any way. So
okay,
this
so
doesn't seem like they're just fighting Azov. And again, the Wagner Group is also full of Nazis. So but that's a
so
separate thing. But still, like I don't understand.
okay, it sounds pretty confusing to me as well. So, have you drawn any assumptions or conclusions why Russians would be bombing hospitals or kindergartens?
Yeah, I have suspicions. Yeah.
What would they ever gain from that?
So the Russian military has a extensive history, particularly in the war in Syria, of targeting hospitals and residential communities and bombing civilians. And the reason why is that the more restraints you put on a bombing campaign, then that means it's going to be harder for you to take shots because then you have to take into consideration how many civilians would die. And the less consideration you have to take into how many civilians would die, the more often you can bomb a city. And the more destructive your bombing can be, in many occasions, the more easy it will be to capture a city because the city will be in rubble, there'll be less people in the city, and you won't have to take into consideration civilian casualties when making military operations.
So
It,
you
it,
can't assume the Russians are aiming to take over Kiev by turning it to rubble, but doing it very, very slowly.
I think that originally their plan was to just take over the country in a day or two. The logistics failures and the strategy of basically just driving into the major cities and immediately getting repelled. And a great example of this would be Kharkiv, where they were repelled multiple times. I think shows that their strategy originally was to just drive in in fact, what the reports we've gotten back from Russian soldiers is they were basically told they'd be welcome like heroes, they'd be able to drive in the cities, it'd all be peachy keen, and that's not what happened. They thought the military would disintegrate, and so now they have a backup plan, or I guess they didn't really have a backup plan, but now they're falling back on the same tactic they used in Syria, which is an aggressive bombing campaign. I mean, if you look at the footage out of Kharkiv, the bombing is absolutely horrific. They're peppering the city.
Mm-hmm.
So if the plan here, because you're talking about your brothers and sisters in Luhansk and Donetsk that you care about, what about the brothers and sisters and children of the brothers and sisters that were killed in Kharkiv just today?
I mean, they're being told by Volodymyr Zelensky to equip weapons, dude.
So now every civilian is fair game because some civilians have decided to bear arms? That happens in every war like this. That happened.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
happened during Hitler's invasion of Russia. Many civilians, Russian civilians, picked up arms to fight the Nazis. That doesn't mean the Nazis were then justified in going and killing children, or bombing children, or killing just random civilians, or bombing residential communities. I mean, were those three kids that were killed today? Were they throwing Molotov cocktails at Russian soldiers?
I would even be very, very careful to draw assumptions immediately to assume it's the Russians and not the Azov terrorists that are trying to create conflict with human shields. They are
So,
very merciless.
so you believe that the Azov Battalion, or you believe there's a chance that the Azov Battalion
Of course.
were using children in Kharkiv for human shields?
Of course. Of
Okay.
course.
Can I show you some? Can I send you some footage?
I mean, what have we learned from terrorists from all the last years? Of course
Well,
they use human shields.
I've covered, yes, terrorists do use human shields, but also I've learned that governments like the Assad government and the Russian government also use it as an excuse to cover up for the fact that many times they don't really care that much about civilian casualties and they end up killing a lot of civilians. The Russian bombing campaign in Syria is notorious for how horrific it was and how it targeted civilians. And do you have any evidence that the Azov Battalion has used Ukrainian civilians as human shields? Because I do have video evidence of
Yeah, I
Russian.
would go very, very carefully with all that's happening right now. We're only 1 week into this, and I would go very, very carefully because,
So I
like,
can't show this footage on screen because it's TOS, but I can show a picture of it on screen. I'm going to send this to you. In this footage, there is a line of Ukrainian cars that are just, in the central of the city. This happened today. The cars were all blown up. I don't see any Azov battalion anywhere. I don't see any military unit. I don't see anything. So here is the footage if you wanted to look at it. It's on the live map. I can also send you the Twitter link as well if this isn't working for you. But this is obviously Russian missiles killing civilians. There's no Azov battalion to be seen.
I'm not enough of an expert to draw that conclusion like you.
Well, I can draw that conclusion because those are just a bunch of cars just at a highway. I don't see any tanks or military or anything here. You don't need to be an expert to see that this is civilians getting blown up by a missile.
Yes, that's at the very least very seemingly obvious.
And how
But
how
drawing
large is
conclusions,
the Azov battalion? Do you know how large they are?
no, but I know how power games work,
Uh-huh.
corrupt politicians in Ukraine, they're gonna need muscle to use their money. And of course, they cultivate some type of economy of muscle.
Okay, so the Azov battalion, um, is not that large. I'm going to be honest. And so the idea that the Azov Battalion, with its around what, 1 to like 2,000 like soldiers, which that is how big the Azov Battalion is, by the way. It's much smaller than the many people would have you believe. Are in all of these cities simultaneously using human shields, and that's why the Russians had to bomb that kindergarten or this highway. Like it makes the Azov Battalion almost feel like a specter. Like the Azov Battalion's hiding under the blankets, they're hiding in the bushes, they're everywhere. There's just not even enough Azov Battalion to be doing what you're saying.
I mean, it's a very well-known Nazi tradition to hide your identity, right?
So you think the Azov Battalion is bigger than what's been reported, and that's how they're in every city?
I think even I would even go as far and say maybe our definition of like Nazis is being limited. Like, at what point do you at what point do you participate in Nazi activities by sponsoring them, right?
So would you say that Vladimir Putin is sponsoring Nazi activities by funding the Wagner Group?
I mean, he's sponsoring their like muscles, of course.
Well, yes, if you give guns to Nazis, what would you say about that?
Uh-huh. But as we acknowledged before, there comes another level of danger when these guys are not controlled and they have their own government too, and they have their own say on the
Okay, but
key.
again, they don't control the government. Zelensky,
That's the question. That would be very interesting to look into that.
well, no, I don't need to look into it. I just know they don't. Like, they just don't have the political power. They're not that popular in Ukraine.
The ones you define as Nazis, you are saying they do not have political power. Like,
They do not have power, political power, to be doing what you're saying they're doing. They do not have the power to do this.
but how do you know about their influence?
Well, the problem is, right, is you're asking me to disprove something that you've provided no evidence for. Let's say, like, it'd be like if I was like, hey, how do you know the aliens don't control Putin?
I'm just pointing out you're not saying you don't know. We both don't know. I'm just
No,
voicing
no,
out
no,
the
no, no, no,
concern.
no, 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 no. I know because I can look at the elected positions. I can look at how much of the vote they got. I can look at the size of their group, and I can tell you they do not have the power and influence to be doing what you're saying they're doing in controlling Zelensky's government, and or even committing the war crimes you're saying they're committing, because they cannot be in all of these cities at the same time. And Russia has a
Dylan,
record of disregarding civilian casualties in Syria. This is in line with the Russian military's track record.
okay, but Dylan, um, what if you live in a nation that a big muscle boy can tell you he's gonna kill you tonight if you don't do something? That's my concern.
So
That
you think that the
Volodymyr,
Azov Battalion might be threatening Zelensky with its
yeah,
2,000 members?
that's at least definitely one of my
Do you have
concerns.
any evidence of this?
His erratic behavior is
That's
very
that's
evident of
that's
something.
that's not evidence that the Azov Battalion. Number one, I don't know what you mean by erratic behavior. I think that he's been actually pretty stoic considering
Uh,
the situation.
He's equipping his people.
Yes,
He's
that's
conscripting people.
yes, because he's being his that's usually what countries do. When you're invaded, you usually start saying, "Okay, everybody, we got to stop the invasion." This is what Russia did
That
during the
is not
invasion of
for the
Russia.
innocent people. That is very bad for the innocent people.
No. No, it isn't actually. I would challenge that. If your country's being
That sounds
invaded,
scary.
if your country's being invaded, the people have a right. I'm an American. This is the worst. I'm the worst person you can make this argument to. We have a Second Amendment in this country, and
Yeah, that's why Westerners have a bad reputation on these foreign policy things.
wait. Westerners have a bad reputation on foreign policy because Westerners would defend their country in during an invasion. If a foreign country tried to invade my community, yes, I would encourage my fellow residents and myself to pick up arms and defend our community against an invader, and I believe it is the right of every person to do that. And not all Ukrainian civilians are picking up guns. Some are fleeing the country, some are going into metro systems for bomb shelters, and some are picking up guns. And those people will be treated like combatants. But these people on the screen, they're just people driving to work. They didn't deserve to be blown up, and they are not combatants. But the Russians blew them up.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm not the Russian expert on Russian missiles, so I don't know. But I want you to know I do love you, and I want people like me and you to be really strong and critical of military-industrial complexes.
Okay, so can I
Right.
ask you a question? Do you think that the Russia's invasion of Ukraine is good or bad for the military-industrial complex?
I think it might be a very great way to stop the chain proxy wars that the military industry has been like harvesting money from. Like they're acting like Vikings. They've been
Please
harvesting money.
don't bullshit. If a
Oh,
country invades another country, obviously weapons manufacturers are going to get excited because that means they get to make more weapons for the war that's just broken out, right?
yes,
Therefore,
exactly.
Putin's invasion of Ukraine is good for the military-industrial complex. Putin did
In the
something that was
in the
beneficial to the military-industrial complex.
in the long term, not so much. If he manages to break the military industry of the West, then that's maybe no more proxy
Wait,
wars.
what do you think he'll do? Wait, what do you think what he might manage to do with his invasions? Could you say that again?
Uh, I mean, I do feel like he's revealing this sinister ties in the West. I think Russia and
Which
China have been
which
doing that.
okay, you do know that the Russian government, there are a lot of people who profit in Russia off of their own military industrial complex. The Russians have their
Yeah,
own military industrial complex, which is benefiting from this war. When you see
of
the
course.
amount of Russian armor that's getting blown up, the amount of weapons that are being abandoned, that stuff needs to be replaced, and it's going to be replaced by Russian weapons
But
manufacturers.
Russian
Therefore,
military
the Russian
infrastructure,
invasion of Ukraine is beneficial to the Russian military industrial complex.
Russian military infrastructure is not built the way the same that American is.
So you're telling me that there's no big corporate boys that benefit in Russia from weapons being
Of
manufactured?
course.
So then
Don't
they do
ask
have
me
a
to know.
Rush. Are those people in bed with Putin and his government?
I'm pretty sure they trust Putin. I'm
And they're
gonna
working
assume
with
so.
Putin, aren't they?
Yeah, I'm gonna assume
What would you
they
call
trust
that?
Putin.
A military industrial complex.
Yeah, and it's not the same as the one in America.
Is it a good one?
If it's been utilized to remove Nazis, then probably.
No, it's been utilized to fund Nazis in the Wagner Group.
Yeah. Like this kind of point of view does make sense, Dylan. But if you do not prioritize power hierarchies, then it kind of falls on itself.
Do you unironic? Are you like a troll?
How do you feel if I am? Do you feel like that?
I'm a little bit. I don't know
That's
for
interesting.
sure.
Anyways, I just wanted to. I'm thankful for the at least that you actually gave this concern space. That's very interesting.
Well, of course, because like I believe in what I said today. I believe in my ideas, right? And I believe them put under scrutiny, they were able to stand the test of time, and survive scrutiny. And so, I would just ask you, like, if your concern is denazification, I would need to, or civilians in Ukraine, then number one, why is Putin funding an organization like the Wagner Group? And number two, why is Putin's military butchering civilians like it is right now? Those are two questions I would like you to like ask yourself. going forward about this?
You're the one who has the expertise to assume Russians are actually like barbarians who have
Oh no,
no
I didn't say
on the
Russian.
brain.
I didn't say Russians are barbarians. I
Okay.
believe I don't like Putin's government. I respect the Russian people immensely. I believe they are a hardy and amazing people. I just don't respect the Russian government, which I think is full of oligarchs, corruption, and imperialists.
And keep in mind, if you are unhappy with corrupt oligarch capitalist global markets, keep in mind who are the top of the hierarchy there. They're the ones who lay out the rules.
This does nothing but help those people. Because you want to know what they just did in the eyes of people like me and
In
a
a
lot of.
vacuum,
You want to know what Putin just did to NATO? He just justified NATO's existence for the next 50 years. There was in the Western, like I study international relations, and a conversation that commonly comes up in a lot of the classes is, what does NATO do going forward? I mean, the Soviet Union's gone. What's the justification for its existence? And there's been a lot of debate about what NATO's going to do going forward. And now, me talking to those same people, they're like, well, now I know NATO has a reason to exist. To the majority of Americans, you've just justified through this invasion the existence of NATO. In Finland, if you check polling, the majority of Finnish people, for the first time, now actually want to join NATO after the invasion. Putin
yeah, it's
has
terrible.
given NATO a PR victory across the board. He has assisted the military-industrial complex in question by giving them a reason to build more guns, build more weapons, and not trust the Russian government.
In the short term,
And
yes.
and there's
these are
no
all
one to
very-
blame but Putin himself. There's no one to blame but Putin for this.
In the short term, these reactions are very predictable, and of course, they know it.
I think in the long term it's gonna be that too, though. Like this is a unprecedented united response to Putin here. No, Putin did not expect the Germans and the Italians and the Swiss to jump on board with EU sanctions. The Germans, who of course have to rely on Russian natural gas, are sending Panzerfausts and surface-to-air missiles to Ukraine. This type of unity is unprecedented when it comes to a modern response to Russia on this. The ruble is in free fall.
There hasn't been this much unity against Russia since the Nazis, right?
What do you mean unity? The Americans were sending the Russians trucks and munitions. And so was Great Britain, the Land-Lease program. I don't know what you mean.
Okay. So you don't know about Churchill's plan to unite Europe against Russians?
Well, no. After post-World War II, well, of course, it was the Cold War.
Mm-hmm.
I understand that there was a Cold War.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's relevant to this conversation in this way. I don't understand how that
That's very
proves.
interesting.
I don't think that proves that Ukraine is a Nazi government. I gotta say though, Zelensky, he is probably he's a revolutionary in many ways. I mean, he is the first ever Jew
He's an
to lead.
Instagram revolutionary.
He is a revolutionary. He's the first ever Jew to lead a Nazi government. That's crazy. I've never heard of that before.
Yeah, but I want to point out, you should be careful about joking about Nazis being submitted by Jews being submitted by Nazis. It's very it's when conflicts are happening, it's good to laugh, but it's good to be aware as well that many Jews have been submitted by Nazis and been told what to do.
Yeah, and that's why Zelensky is fighting against the Wagner Group. And also, one of the people who were involved in the detainment and putting gays in concentration camps in Chechnya was recently killed in Ukraine. And so, I don't know. I think the Ukrainian government killing people involved in the running of concentration camps, I would say that's pretty good anti-fascist action.
Yeah. Anyways, as I've said before, this was just very interesting to see you respond to this space or not, and
Would you
not
say that I
necessarily-
had a strong response?
I mean, you are not like any normal person. You are, of course, strung out in the streaming lifestyle, and I get that.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, of course, you have your like you're you're trying to find your way too, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to find my way in life. I think all of us are trying to find our way in life.
Okay.
Well,
Better.
thank you for coming on. I won't ban you, okay? Because you actually were the only person in the last 5 days who disagreed with me on this topic who actually had the balls to come in here and talk to me. And I do respect that, so I'm not going to ban you, okay?
Sick. I've been watching you for some time, and I will admit I have shit posted in your chat for fun. I'm not gonna lie, but 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 this is like I'm giving you honest concerns, at least as far as I can tell for myself.
Okay. You have a good one, okay, buddy?
Goodbye.
Okay, bye-bye. That was a conversation.